Imagine, my friend, that you live in a world divided into two parts. One part whose people live their lives with full rights and luxury, and another part deprived of all rights, at the bottom since the moment of birth. Unfortunately for you, you were born into that marginalized section, and not only that, but you are also being punished for a crime you didn't commit. What do you think you will do? Will you live with this situation, or will you try to change the darkness that surrounds you? That's what we will find out in our story today with our hero, Reto. And before we begin, my otaku friend, please like and subscribe to the channel so we can reach the largest number of likes. We see a little girl playing with a doll, but it rips slightly. Her mother says, "It's gone. It's ruined, even though we recently bought it. How about we throw it in the trash and buy you a new one?" The girl agrees. A little while later, we see her mother throwing away a bag of garbage, which is being transported by truck to a landfill. At the same moment, we see our hero, Reto, running through the trash, thinking to himself, it's only natural that if something is ruined, it's considered trash and thrown away, losing any value. But what happens to this trash when it's thrown away? Since getting rid of trash is a given, humans have become accustomed to considering anything they don't want as trash, even if it's a human being. All these thoughts run through Reto's mind as he rummages through the trash, searching for something that can be repaired and reused. While he's engrossed in his search, he's surprised by one of the guards who opens the door, sounds the alarm, and points his gun at him, saying, "You're the vandal who steals trash and ruins the city's appearance. Have a bad day." Moments later, the other guards arrive, and Radu throws some trash at them, taking the opportunity to escape. However, they quickly surround him and open fire on him. He dodges the bullets and runs at top speed toward the exit, but a bullet hits him in the arm. He runs away and hides among them until they let him go and continue chasing him. He then emerges from the sewers in the middle of the city. The next morning, we find two women talking about yesterday's incident and the appearance of the trash thief, our friend. One of them says with disgust, "Who would think of stealing trash? It's truly disgusting." Her friend replies, "Of course those savages who live in the slums. Who else?" At that moment, her friend tells her to be quiet and points to one of the savages she's talking about. As soon as the man turns and walks away, they look at him with disdain and say, "What brings these rabble to our clean city?" We leave them and jump over the city wall to see the stark difference between the shiny white city with everything in it and the slums where there is literally no clean place. We move on to Reto, who sits cleaning and repairing the items he brought yesterday. All around him, the residents mock and hate him, talking about the garbage thief, saying they're going to call the police to ruin his life. Reto's conversation is interrupted by his friend Chio's voice, who says, "You went out to collect garbage again. Don't you know that city residents are obsessed with this? If you get caught, you could die," he replies. City residents throw away sound items that could be repaired and used. It's a shame that these items are thrown away in vain. Besides, I sell them to survive. At that moment, three people appear. One of them puts his hand to his nose, saying, "What's that bad smell?" He then looks at Chio sarcastically. "Why are you standing here? Aren't you afraid of smelling like garbage like him? Look at the gloves he's wearing. If he touches anyone, he'll immediately infect them." Then one of them glances at the lantern in front of Rodeo and says mockingly, "No one wants to buy this garbage you're selling." Chio responds firmly, "Whatever you're saying is pointless. We're all equal, and no one is better than anyone else." They all object, saying, "It's true that we all live in the slums, and the rich consider us all riffraff, but Rodeo is different. He's the son of a crazed murderer. These slums were originally built as prisons for criminals, and they were our ancestors. So we have to improve our image in the eyes of the rich by any means possible. But Rodeo's father came and ruined everything after he started killing people. He's no different." Their conversation is interrupted by Rodeo's blood-curdling stare and they leave. One of them says to his friend, like father. After they leave, Chio tells Reto, "I trust you. I'm certain you're a good person and won't be a criminal like your father." Reto responds with obvious embarrassment, seemingly impressed by her. He is then surprised by her admiration for the doll among his belongings, and he says, confused, "It's not for sale." But when he sees her intense admiration, he backs down. At that moment, Chio's mother appears, interrupting their conversation and calling out to her daughter, "Didn't I warn you before not to talk to that boy? Stay away from him." Reto returns home, upset to find the man he saw in town earlier. We learn that this man is named Reto, Reto's adoptive father. As soon as Reto enters, Reto begins to mock him, saying, "Don't you know how to talk to Chio? I advise you to be honest with her about your feelings instead of torturing yourself like this." Then he asks him, "What did you do yesterday in the city? Didn't I tell you not to risk yourself while I was here?" Reto replies, "I'm not risking myself for..." "Yes, so what happened yesterday? Saw what happened yesterday, son. Even though we're not related by blood, we're family. You should live your life like a child and not try to repay me." Reto explains, "You're the one who adopted me when I was a child. What I'm doing now is just helping out, nothing more." At that moment, Recto notices the wound on Ruto's arm and asks him to extend his arm so he can change the bandage. When he's finished, he warns him, don't go to the dumpster again. It won't end with just a small cut next time. Ruto looks at his hand and says, this wound is minor compared to the wounds my father left on me. Recto reminds him, crimes in the slums are punishable by death by being thrown into the abyss. And that's what happened to your father. So you have to be careful and not act rashly, even if we live in this dirty. Ruto remembers that his hand has been like this since he was young, and that it hurts a lot, in addition to the looks of hatred and malice he receives from the people around him. All of this caused him a great psychological burden, until Recto adopted him and gave him these gloves, which he has worn ever since. The pain subsided. For this reason, he feels so grateful to Recto, and he will never be able to repay him for this kindness. His thoughts are interrupted by Recto, who holds the doll and says, give this to Chio tomorrow and tell her you love her before someone else meets you. Ruto becomes tense and angry, asking Chio not to interfere in his personal life. At the same moment, a masked figure stands watching their house. During the day, we see Ruto sitting, trying to follow Recto's advice with a smile on his face. But he eventually gives up, telling himself that a smile doesn't suit him at all. He then goes out for a walk holding the doll and thinks about the abyss, a huge dumping ground for garbage and criminals. A short while later, Ruto stands watching the trial of a criminal as people gather, waiting for him to be thrown into the abyss. He asks himself, what happens to criminals after they fall into the abyss? His thoughts are interrupted by Chio's voice, who says, you rarely come here. Ruto quickly panics and hides the doll behind his back. As Chio continues, the view from up here is very sad. Ruto replies, it's no different from anywhere else in the slums. She explains to him, the slums were built on the edge of a cliff, and the rich told us they could get rid of us whenever they wanted. This is very upsetting, especially since everyone who lives here witnesses the executions, whether willingly or unwillingly. At the end of her words, she says, I don't want to see you thrown into the abyss, so don't risk yourself rummaging through the trash. Ruto replies, Ricto told me the same thing. She smiles and says, Ricto worries about you, and that's why he loves you. At that moment, Ruto's face turns tomato red as he absorbs her words, and he sneers at her, while his own face turns tomato red with embarrassment. He hands her the doll, saying, you may not like it because it's used, but I think it suits you very well. She happily takes it and tells him she'll keep it. Ruto is overjoyed and runs back home to tell Recto what happened and ask him to stop bothering him. But on his way back, he bumps into a group of police officers and falls to the ground. He is surprised by their presence and continues on his way. When he arrives home, he opens the door, expecting to find Recto waiting to hear his story. But he freezes when he sees Recto lying on the ground, with a masked man stabbing him in the stomach. Ruto screams and attacks the masked man without thinking. The masked man throws him to the ground, injuring his face. As Ruto lies on the ground, unable to move, the masked man grabs a book from the floor and leaves the house. Ruto approaches Recto, who calls out to him with his dying breaths, saying, wait, I'll help you. But Recto grabs him by the clothes and says in a weak voice, run away. And change this dirty world. Then he dies. Ruto remains in a state of shock, unable to comprehend what is happening. At that moment, the police arrive, tackle Ruto to the ground, handcuff him, and demand that he confess. He tells them, I'm innocent, I didn't do anything. The killer escaped before Recto could die and bleed to death. The officer replies, your words won't change anything. It's impossible to believe you, with the victim's blood soaking your clothes. Ruto repeats that he is innocent and that the killer escaped, but they ignore him and beat him. In a short time, the news spreads. Ruto will be tried for the murder of Recto, his adoptive father. A short while later, we see Ruto hanging before the assembled crowd. The leader says, this man has committed a crime more serious than stealing garbage, murder. Even if the victim was a savage, we will not allow any murderer to pollute our land. We will execute him immediately. At that moment, everyone shouts in unison, throw the garbage into the abyss. Ruto falls into a state of denial, unable to comprehend that his life has been turned upside down in a matter of seconds. He desperately searches for anyone who might believe him, until he spots Chio and asks her for help. She responds with a cold face, I trusted you, but in the end you're just a copy of your father. Then she throws the doll in his face. Her words shock him, and he looks at the crowd with hatred, saying, you are all just trash without a will. Although you have eyes and ears, you neither see nor hear the truth, be assured. I will take revenge on all of you. His words are interrupted by a glimpse of the masked killer amidst the crowd. The masked man smiles sarcastically, and before Ruto can say a word, he is thrown into the abyss. He falls, filled with hatred and revenge, threatening everyone. Moments later, Ruto opens his eyes in surprise to find himself still alive, but is shocked by a foul odor, unlike anything he's ever smelled in his life. He looks around to discover he's surrounded by a sea of garbage. From the depths of this sea emerges a huge monster. At that moment, he realizes he's in hell. We see Ruto running quickly and terrified from the monster that appeared before him as he fell into the abyss. As the monster howled, new monsters emerged from beneath the sea of garbage, chasing him mercilessly. Reto continued running, only to be surprised to find himself surrounded from all directions. He sat on the ground stunned and in disbelief that the garbage itself was literally chasing him. He screamed at the top of his lungs, cursing the city dwellers who had thrown him into this hell. Amid his screams, an explosion occurred, and Reto fell injured amidst the garbage, blood gushing from his head and suffocating from the foul air that filled the place. He looked around for a safe place, but realized there was no safe place in this vast garbage dump. He coughed up blood as the monsters approached him and asked himself, "Is this the end of the suffering I've experienced since my childhood?" As he resigned himself to his inevitable fate, he remembered Recto and his gaze before his death, and felt a strange energy surging through his body. He stands up and heads towards a water pipe lying on the ground, grabs it and says, "My turn isn't over yet. I won't give up. I must avenge Recto and kill those who accused me and threw me into the abyss. But before, I must find Recto's killer and tear him apart in the most horrific way possible." At that moment, a monster attacks him, and Reto easily fends it off. On the other side, we see an unknown man sitting amidst piles of garbage. Sensing the turmoil, he heads towards Reto's location. We return to Reto, who has gone berserk, attacking the monster with all his might. But the monster doesn't seem to be affected by its blows. Despite Reto's severe injuries and constant bleeding, he continues to fight fiercely, using anything at his disposal until he throws the monster away. He grabs a road sign and throws it, but the monster emerges from under the garbage and attacks him like a shark. Reto dodges his attack, and as the fight continues, he feels extremely exhausted, as the effect of the strange energy within him grows stronger. Suddenly, two monsters attack him with all their might. He manages to escape and defeats them with a metal plate in his hand. Reto falls to the ground in exhaustion, unable to catch his breath. His joy is short-lived, however, as the massive monster arrives and prepares for a powerful attack. Reto musters up what little strength he has left and runs at full speed, but the monster hits the ground hard, creating a massive shockwave that sends everything in its path flying, including Reto. Moments later, Reto opens his eyes with difficulty to see the masked man standing before him. He asks in surprise, "Who is this, and what brought him here?" His thoughts are interrupted by the masked man lifting him off the ground and giving him a powerful kick, restoring his ability to breathe. Reto asks the masked man, "Who are you? And what are these monsters that attacked? What exactly is going on?" The masked man tells him to be quiet, but Reto shouts angrily, "Tell me they threw me underground here. I don't know anything." The masked man replies in a serious voice, "We're not underground. We're above ground. And as long as you're here, you have to be quiet and speak calmly." Reto shouts again, demanding an explanation, and the masked man explodes in anger. "Shut up, you idiot. How many times have I told you to be quiet? Lower your voice. Didn't I tell you we're above ground? All you see around us is the garbage you threw from above. And because of your stupidity, the monsters know where you are now, you retard." The masked man points to the monsters behind him and tells him that these are garbage monsters and that he can't kill them with ordinary weapons. They sense sound, so he was telling him to be quiet. He adds, "These monsters aren't ordinary. I didn't want to come into contact with them, but you destroyed everything with your siren-like voice." At the end of his words, the umbrella the masked man is holding transforms, and at that moment a monster attacks them from behind. The masked man blocks the attack with his umbrella, wiping out the monster in seconds. Reto is stunned by the mere touch of the umbrella as the monsters turn to ash. The masked man then rushes at the herd of monsters gathered around them, wiping them out in record time. Reto watches in amazement, and only the massive monster remains, which fires a liquid at the masked man, leaps into the air to dodge the attack, blocking it with his umbrella. Then, taking advantage of the monster's roar, the monster turns to ash, and the umbrella returns to its normal form. The masked man walks over to Reto, removes his mask to reveal his face, and introduces himself. "My name is Anjun. I'm a cleaner." He quickly replaces his mask when he smells the polluted air. He tells Reto, "You're the reason for everything that happened." Before he can finish, Reto faints from exhaustion. Reto delves into his memories, remembering when he returned home beaten. Recto asked him what happened. "The children beat me up when I told them that things have life and are worth caring for." "Did you beat them, sir?" Reto replied. "Because you told me that anything we care for will have a soul," and stroked Reto's face. "It's true that this is an old legend, but I believe in it. All the things I use have a role, and that's proof that they are alive." Reto points to the objects around him and asks, "Even these things? Why not?" Recto replies, "Anything is possible. Maybe if you care for the things you use, they will come to life." At that moment, Reto opens his eyes to find himself handcuffed, with Anjin dragging him behind him. He shouts, "What are you doing? Let me go." Anjin replies, "That's not a polite way to talk to the person who saved you." Reto objects, "Anyone who saves someone doesn't drag them all the way down like that. Let me go. I have to go back now." Anjin suddenly stands up, points to the sky, and says, "See that ball? It's impossible to reach it now. There's no way up." That ball is constantly moving. Reto angrily responds, that doesn't concern me. I'll go back. And since you're saying it's impossible now, that means you know something. Tell me how to get back to the city. I'll use everything I know about this place, the monsters and the powers they wield, and I'll go back and kill that scum who framed me, and I'll take revenge on all the surface dwellers. Reto then threatens Anjin. I'll scream so loud everyone can hear us. If you don't tell me... At that, Anjin throws his helmet to the ground and says, if you're so excited, then get ready to learn. After a while, we see Anjin dragging Reto behind him and throwing him in front of a gas station, then suddenly disappearing. Reto is surprised by what has happened, and before he can do anything, he notices a group of people in front of him. Amazement appears on their faces as soon as they see Reto in his clothes, and they approach him cautiously, saying, are you a roofer? Reto replies, they threw me from above. They lift their masks in surprise, and one of them says, this is the first time we've seen a roofer alive. After a few moments of examination, they confirm that Reto is still alive, and they ask him to forgive them, as this is the first time a roofer has survived being thrown. Then one of them asks, how did those criminals tie you up? Come on, let's untie you. Reto thinks, these guys treat me better than that animal Anjin. But suddenly he finds himself tied up and locked in a box. One of them says, we don't want the treasure we found to escape. Surface dwellers are being sold for exorbitant prices, and we never dreamed we'd find one of them alive. A man approaches Reto and says, do you know why surface dwellers are in such high demand? He continues, his tone filled with hatred. We hate you. You're the ones who dumped your garbage on us without any regard for us. Thanks to you, the air has become polluted and toxic, and monsters have appeared that attack anyone who comes near. There are a huge number of people here waiting for any opportunity to take revenge on you. You think they'll kill you right away? No, they'll torture you and tear you apart. Then he stuffs food into Reto's mouth, saying, I don't want you to die before we sell you. He laughs madly and says to his friends, look, his tongue is so sensitive he can't eat our food. One of them responds, it's only natural. Everything here is just garbage. But their laughter turns to screams, as the man stands horrified when he sees Radu eating the food with ease. Radu continues angrily, whether here or there isn't much difference. Everyone I've met divides people according to their whims, rich and poor, surface dwellers and abyss dwellers. At that moment, a strange energy surrounds Radu, and he easily breaks the shackles and looks at them angrily. I'm sick of people treating me with contempt. On the other side, we see Anjin, watching the situation from a distance, saying, I was right to choose him. Reto echoes Reto's words. If you treat things carefully, they'll come to life. He holds the chain in front of him, and as soon as he touches it, it changes shape to the astonishment of those around him, who can't believe a surface dweller possesses this ability. At that moment, Anjin says, Reto is one of the people who give life to inanimate objects. They're the givers. Quickly, the people around Reto come to the same conclusion and attack him because the givers pose a threat, as they can transform objects into weapons. One of them manages to knock the chain out of Reto's hand, and they think they can defeat him. But Reto grabs a car tire and uses his ability, hitting them hard with it. Shock rips through the crowd. Even Anjin himself is shocked by what he sees. Reto is giving his power to more than one thing at the same time. Reto continues fighting and defeats the last gang member, who falls to the ground clutching his hand while cursing Reto. Reto heads toward him, preparing to kill him, but is surprised to find Anjin holding his hand and saying, calm down, enough of this. Reto regains consciousness, objects around him fall to the ground, and the tire in his hand turns to ash. He says to Anjin with disdain, what just happened? Reto recalls that when he remembered Reto's words, he felt a strange energy emanating from the gloves he was wearing. He wipes the blood dripping from his nose, only to be interrupted by Anjin's voice. It's only natural that your body is exhausted after using your ability like this. Sorry, I should have checked your abilities first. Anjin tells him he will provide him with all the information he wants, but in return, he asks him to join the cleaners. These words shock Reto, who hesitantly asks, can I refuse your offer? And so the story comes to a close with this big question. What awaits Reto next? Who are the cleaners? And what is the secret behind their amazing ability? Here the episode ends. If you liked the episode, don't forget to subscribe and like the channel. See you in the next episode.